February.
I know, my gosh, it's
Right.
hard for me to imagine that we're already in March. On the other hand, right, it means that spring is ever a little closer. So
Yes, we're up to over 11 hours of daylight.
it's pretty amazing.
Love it.
Pretty amazing. All right. So, okay. So again, I apologize if I pronounce this.
That's the least thing you have to apologize for, Rabbi.
Oh my gosh! What? I mean, I have so many other things to apologize for. Oy.
Oh, don't go there.
No, I know. My gosh, it's not Yom Kippur, right? All right. So Jacob Kehinde Alupona, a professor of African religious traditions at Harvard Div School. He is the author of City of 201 Gods, Ile Ife in Time, Space, and the Imagination, and African Religions, a very short introduction. Excuse me. In this discussion, we focused on the religious tradition of the Yoruba people. Previous interviews in this series with scholars from the Buddhist, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Jain, Taoist, and atheist traditions can be found here. And I'll just refresh your memory, or at least refresh mine, and for the sake of Kara, right, that we've read a number of these, and most of them have been fairly interesting. The one that sticks out as being not interesting was the one with the atheist, or at least disappointing. And some of the others were were sometimes a little bit difficult to follow, but many of them have been very powerful. The Buddhist and the Christian the ones in particular really stick out for me as being very powerful. All right, so George Yancey. So he's the man who has initiated this series, and we read his piece at the very beginning, and he explained that he was doing this because of his own fear of death, like that he has an unwillingness to talk about death, and so he decided that he was going to kind of force himself to have these conversations and confront this thing that is very frightening.
Who is he?
He is a philosophy professor at Emory, and he writes for the Times on a regular basis. And before this series about death, he wrote primarily about race, and has had a fairly sort of controversial series of articles about race, which I think we read, and we sort of engaged with some of the controversial aspects of his articles. I think in what was a productive way. I think that may have even been before we were on Zoom, so pre-pandemic. So people in this room probably were not part of those conversations, because it would have included primarily people from Cohen, 112 Center Street. All right, so here in the West, George Yancey says, where a few monotheistic religions dominate the culture, knowledge and understanding of indigenous African religious practices is rare. Is Yoruba monotheistic or polytheistic, or is it something else entirely? Alupona, Yoruba religion manifests elements of both. It differs from many world religions that define their cosmology primarily in theistic terms. Yoruba religion focuses on the lived religious experiences of the people, rather than on systematized beliefs and creeds, as we see in other world religions such as Islam and Christianity. Yoruba religious traditions are woven around oral traditions and practices. The spiritual realm exists parallel to the human realm, and it accommodates the supreme being, gods, ancestors, and minor spiritual entities who interact with the human realm at different levels. Okay, so this is—
What are minor spiritual entities?
Yeah, so there's a bunch of possible questions here. So So I think that's a good question. I don't know the answer, but hopefully he will respond to it, right? What are some of the other things that pop out at you in terms of this presentation?
The existence of a parallel realm,
Yeah,
and also kind of focusing on the lived religious experience of people, which almost brings it closer to Judaism.
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting, right? When he says, "Oh, it's a lived religious experience," right, rather than systematized beliefs and creeds, right? As we see in other world religions, right? The world religions he chooses to contrast it to are Islam and Christianity, right, which tend to have fairly sophisticated theological, systematized theological frameworks, as opposed on the, Judaism, right, where there certainly is theism, right, but systematic theology is not Judaism's strong suit, right, and it too is focused more on traditions
Yeah.
rather than on systems.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm actually really fascinated by this parallel spiritual realm,
Yeah.
right, with a supreme being, gods, ancestors, and minor spiritual entities, right? That there's a distinction, right, between the supreme being, right, which in a Jewish tradition, right, would be God, right, and then gods, right? What is that distinction? Ancestors make sense to me, right, and minor spiritual entities. In response to Sandy's question, I don't know what they are in a Yoruba context, but I would say that in a Jewish context, right, that would be things like angels.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Central to the Yoruba religious worldview is the notion of Ase, which Roland Abiodun, again, pronunciation is not my strong suit here, has characterized as the empowered word that must come to pass, life force and energy that regulates all movement and activity in the universe. Religious activities are mostly communal and are guided by specialists, custodians, and leaders of the traditions, sacred kings, diviners, priests, priestesses, and healers, all of whom are integral to maintaining the balance in the cosmos. Right, so very interesting, right? That there's this notion of Ase, right? And that it is on one hand verbal, right? It's the empowered word, right? But it also seems to be more than verbal, right? It's a life force or an energy, right? And that there are all these religious personages who are responsible for maintaining the balance.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Yoruba conceive the world as two halves of a gourd, the one we live in and the one where the deities and ancestors live. In between these two spheres, there are forces, mainly malevolent in nature, Ajogun, or warriors, as Wande Abimbola calls them, who must be constantly placated, sometimes with sacrifices, to prevent them from wreaking havoc on earth. In short, human devotional practices play a central role in regulating the activities of Ajogun and in keeping the Yoruba universe in equilibrium. All right. Very interesting.
Yeah. It almost calls up some of what little I know about the Mayans.
I know almost nothing about that. So Naomi, share with us what you
Their basic feeling was that their gods needed blood,
Mm,
either from them themselves or from sacrificial victims. But their gods definitely needed blood from time to time.
yeah. Right, and that I think that that's not an I think that's not an uncommon understanding of gods, right, or of spiritual beings, because it sounds to me like these Ajogun are not considered God, right? They're considered something else, right? Sort of chaotic angels almost, right? But that there's a way in which, in order to maintain balance on Earth, right, there's a need to provide some sort of vital life force, you know.
Again, you need to sort of think about sacrifices made on the high altar in Jerusalem
Yeah,
before the diaspora. I mean, we were into this for a while.
100%.
Human, but definitely animal.
Right, absolutely. And I think that that's really, and I do think, right, that one of the things, one of the things that people find difficult about Judaism, right, about rabbinical Judaism, which is the sort of standard form of Judaism that is the basis for most contemporary Judaism, both Orthodox and liberal, right, is that there is a constant memory of that sacrificial system.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We don't do that anymore, right? But we are constantly enjoined to remember that we used to.
Yeah.
And we never stop talking about it.
That's exactly right, Sandy. We never do stop talking about it.
And that
Least,
could offend some of us.
Actually, I should say, Sandy, that I never stop talking about it. I do think that there are a lot of Jews who don't talk about it. The reform movement in Judaism has basically removed it, right, from consideration. And it is an interesting question. Is that, and I don't say this in any kind of a polemical way. I say this as I think a very important question, right? Is it appropriate and helpful to remove that memory, or is it somehow important to remember because it is such a central part of so many traditions, right? That there's something, including Christianity, right, where the sacrificial victim is none other than, Jesus of Nazareth, right? There's a human victim, right? And that sort of ultimate sacrifice is played out, in the Mass every week, and as part of the Easter service. So it's, so is there a way in which we are giving up something that's deeply human by giving up this talk of sacrifice? I don't know the answer. I just think it's.
Let me ask you this. Do some Orthodox congregations in some parts of the world still practice Kipporos? You swing the chicken around your head 3 times and then you kill the chicken.
Right, because it's, and then you give the chicken to, then you give the chicken to be eaten.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's, which is, and I don't know about other, I don't know enough about other sacrificial religions to know the degree to which, the primary sacrifices in Judaism are eaten, right, by the priests, right, and the Paschal offering, right, is eaten by each household. So it's not
Yes.
sacrifice with a waste of food, so to speak. Although there are, I think they're called, I forget what they're called, burnt offerings or something like this, where you burn the entire animal in the Torah system.
Yeah, but right. I mean, the communion is this is my blood and this is my body.
100%.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very visceral, it's a very, very visceral, and you know, unless you're part of the system, can be quite off-putting. And even if you are part of the system, you know, can feel off-putting.
Yeah.
Having been a member of that system for you know, for the first, you know, 30 years of my life. And it was actually that sort of, it was partly that reality of Christianity that made it difficult for me to continue being Christian. Little did I know that I was ushering myself into a more complicated sacrificial system than the one that I was leaving. So anyway, all right. So to continue with the Yoruba, but I do think that this raises a very, you know, the Yoruba system, right? It would be very tempting, right? Like in the comparison to the Mayan system, to say, oh, this is sort of a primitive, right? To put scare quotes around that word, right? System, right? Without sort of recognizing that the Mayan system, of course, there's no Mayans anymore, right? But there are, and Judaism does not partake in the sacrificial system anymore, right? And in Judaism and Christianity, right, the sacrificial system has become symbolic, right? It's, you know, it's become ritualized in a symbolic sense, not ritualized in reality, right? But you know, but animal sacrifice is still part of the Hajj, right? In Islam, and you know, and there are obviously still sacrificial systems in the world. So it's, you know, anyway, let's continue with our article. In the West, indigenous African religions are often I guess I anticipated where he was going to go with this. Indigenous African religions are often dismissed as primitive or superstitious by those who don't know them. Can you give readers unfamiliar with African religious traditions some sense of the history and complexity of the Yoruba people and their culture? I mean, probably you can already tell by what I just said that I reject this notion of primitive versus non-primitive, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, so Alupono says, the Yoruba people who live primarily in southwest Nigeria are one of the largest ethnic groups in West Africa. Yoruba people are also found in the Republic of Benin, Togo, Sierra Leone, and several other countries. As a result of the transatlantic slave trade between the 16th and 19th century, a large number of Yoruba were taken to the Caribbean, North America, and South America, where they had significant influence on the culture and religion of the New World. So in some sense, Yancey says, influences of Yoruba culture and sensibility are already here in the West and have been for centuries. What about the main population in Nigeria? The origin of the Yoruba in Nigeria is slightly more complex. According to the Yoruba origin myth, the world was created in the sacred city of Ile-Ife. Again, I apologize about my pronunciation.
Yeah.
Where the Yoruba civilization blossomed in the 9th century and grew to become one of the largest empires in West Africa. While the Yoruba Empire Oyo is now acknowledged as the source of the standard and contemporary Yoruba language, culture, and value system, it is to Ile-Ife, the sacred and ancient city of the Yoruba, that scholars now believe all other Yoruba settlements owe their unrivaled urban culture and robust cosmopolitan city-states. Other origin myths allude to Yoruba migration from distant places to their current homes, but that has not been substantiated by archaeology or in the Yoruba culture more broadly. All right, I'm not sure that I entirely follow this.
Yeah.
because if it is a myth, I'm not exactly, and I'm not sure where that city Ile Ife is or was, and I'm not sure exactly what he means by the unrivaled urban culture and robust cosmopolitan city states. I'm not sure unrivaled in comparison to what other cultures and city states they're unrivaled. So there seems to be more here than I'm able to respond to. So anything, yeah.
There's also, like, the world was created, but what is the creation legend? In some places it's twins who parted the waters or what. No, there are legends that go
Right.
with creation in a lot of cultures.
Yes.
And this seems to just gloss over. Fine, it was created in this place, but by what forces?
Right. And if it is, and if it blossomed in the 9th century of this millennium,
Yeah.
right, then presumably it had a lot of other,
Yeah.
It was able to borrow from many other religious and spiritual cultures, the way that, Judaism, I mean, all religious cultures obviously borrow from the cultures that surround it when they're formed, right? Islam drew from Christianity and Judaism. Christianity obviously drew from the Israelite scriptures, and Judaism drew in its biblical form, from their surrounding Mesopotamian cultures. So it's, that would be an interesting thing to know. All right. Go ahead, Naomi. Anything else?
No, I'm just going to Google it.
Yes, me too. I tend not to Google things beforehand, just so that we're learning them all together, but it would have maybe been helpful to do a little bit of extra research on this. How do Yoruba believers think about the reality and meaning of death? All right, that's really the question. Interesting. So death as a palpable force looms large in the Yoruba religious and social consciousness. I mean, and that already sounds reasonable based on the fact that he's mentioned already several times, not only deities, but also ancestors, right, that have a sort of a continued existence on the other half in the other half of the gourd, so to speak. From cosmology to various ritual practices and genres of oral traditions, such as proverbs, poetry, and short stories, are all brought to bear on the reality of death. Not a day goes by that speakers of the Yoruba language do not make mention of death as both a phenomenon and as a certainty. Among the Owo Yoruba people, Iku, which is death, is likened to the hippopotamus, a yinmi or a rinmi, whose heavy weight no person can carry, and whose presence one cannot run or escape from. Excuse me, this conveys the dilemma of a bereaved child who can neither carry the body of a deceased parent, nor is courageous enough to abandon it, highlighting the helplessness of one when confronted by death. In Yoruba folktales, death is also portrayed as an old, haggard man who carries a heavy club with which he kills his victim. No one is spared. The young, the old, kings, chiefs, commoners, and the rich can all be his victims. It is assumed that at creation, and before individuals leave Arun, which is the other world, the preconscious mind is made aware of when death will strike in Aye, this world, and when they will return to Arun. The appointed date, however, is never known. So that's very interesting. So in a sense, right, every being comes from the other world into this world with a knowledge of not only that they will die, but in some sort of unconscious way, people know when they're going to die. It's just not known to the conscious mind.
Their days are counted.
Yeah. Somehow the pre-conscious mind is made aware of when death will strike, but it's that date is never consciously known. Right? It sort of reminds me of the Jewish tradition, right? That in the womb, every baby, every fetus is taught the entire Torah, and that when a baby leaves the womb, right, an angel hits us right here, under our noses, right, and that's why we have these little things under our noses. But all of it, when we get hit with that, whatever the angel hits us with, we lose all of our knowledge, right, and we have to learn it again. So we have to relearn it in our conscious mind, not in our pre-conscious.
How many people believe that?
Who knows, Sandy? It's a legend.
Bubba-meises.
Yeah, but Bubba-meisters can be helpful, right? They can be helpful to sort of think about, well, how is it that there's all this knowledge in the world, right? And I have so much more to learn. Yet we talk about kids sometimes as old souls, like they seem to know, they seem to know more than we do sometimes, children. Anyway, so interesting. I'm also interested by what he says up here in the previous paragraph, right? That death is sort of this omnipresent hippopotamus, right? And that people are helpless in front of it. Which is a very different image than a man with a club who walks around knocking everybody over the head.
Well, maybe he's riding the hippopotamus.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so according to Yoruba, should human beings embrace death? And if so, how or why? It is assumed that death doesn't end a person's life, but instead marks a passage from one realm of existence to the next. Hence, the Yoruba believe that there is an afterlife, or an after death, in which the living dead exist as a part of the sacred cosmos. There is also an ambiguous response to death, depending on the circumstances surrounding the event. Death in very old age, for example, is welcomed as a fulfillment of one of the cardinal life quests. This form of death is celebrated by the community as a necessary transition to the ancestral world. On the other hand, deaths that occur in infancy, childhood, or young adulthood are frowned upon and not often celebrated because the deceased was yet to accomplish his or her mission on Earth.
Wait a minute. If your days are counted, then when you die, I would assume you have accomplished whatever your mission was.
Yeah, that is really an interesting.
That's an interesting theological question.
Right. Why would you assume, or why would one assume, right, that a person's mission would require more time than that person had on Earth?
Yeah.
Right. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. But again, I mean, I do think, right, that as with most religious traditions, right, the Yoruba, have, it's not, he already sort of said it's not a systematized theology, right? It's based on people's religious experiences. And so maybe there are both. On one hand, everyone unconsciously knows the day of their death. On the other hand, right, no one wants to die early. And so it's not considered, ideal.
Yeah, also, maybe he comes to this later on, but are there rewards and punishments in this place of the afterlife?
Yes.
Which depend on your behavior in this one?
Right.
if so, was your mission in life to be a bad guy?
Right. What is and how do we understand that person's mission? Right.
Yeah.
Does accomplishing one's mission, which, again, from our Western monotheistic, perspective, means, that we behaved in a way that was appropriate. Would that does that mean that there's some sort of reward in the afterlife that it does not happen if you actually didn't complete your mission? All right, so deaths involving unnatural causes fall into the same category. It is by tradition a taboo for older people to participate in young people's funerals. Interesting. To ward off the malicious knell of death. This is also because the death of a younger person is considered bad death, not worth celebrating by the elderly. It is a taboo for kings, Oba, to witness funeral celebrations or behold a dead body.
I'd love to see the definition of older people, because,
yes,
does this mean that if your child has been hit by a truck, you should not go to the child's funeral?
Right.
What do we do about mourning here?
Right. And what this reminds me of in terms of that sentence is, it's a taboo for priests in, Kohanes in our tradition.
Oh, right.
Right. And so, a Kohen in the Jewish tradition will only go to the funeral of a close family member. Right.
Yeah.
So it could be that, this is true for folks who are not related, right? But, parents and grandparents, maybe you'll go to the funeral, right? And you'll mourn that death, but it, as a community, it's less, right? Which raises again the other question, which is, and this is very hard to understand cross-culturally, right? In the sense of which deaths are worth mourning and which ones are not, right? I was talking to someone the other day who, when they had a stillbirth, there was no mourning sort of allowed, and this was some years ago, and nowadays I think that would not be the case, right? And who knows at what point not mourning a stillborn infant was made some sort of sense from a cultural psychological point of view, and at some point that changed, and now we do that. I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to make any kind of a statement about that.
Probably you mourn. I guess that the child was not considered to be a person
right
at birth. Therefore, you were not mourning a person. Well, what the hell? I'm not a theological expert. You are. So.
And neither are they.
Well, no, but I mean, I do think.
I mean, it's a lot of nonsense.
I do think, though, for instance, that in earlier times, right, pregnancy and childbirth were much more dangerous than they are now. And I would argue that obviously for women of color in this country, they're still more dangerous than they should be. But that in a context in which many children didn't survive, right? And given the strictures of mourning, the sort of restrictions on life during mourning, maybe it was not seen as, we can't do those restrictions. Who knows? All right, is there an account within Yoruba that explains why we fear death? Absolutely. Yoruba names reveal a lot about why they fear death. Consider the following. Iku badije, death has ruined me. Iku bileje, death has wreaked havoc on our family. Ikugbeye, death has taken away our dignity. Ikumone, death is no respecter of persons. Ikumofin, death does not recognize any law. Ikukaken, death has killed the hero. Ikupalero, death has killed the socialite. Ikusika, death has committed acts of wickedness, and so on. The dead must also be called upon to avenge his or her own wrongful death. My maternal grandmother once told me a story of a great uncle who was murdered on my grandfather's farm while he was working, and whose body was brought home for burial rites. My grandfather, being a devout Christian, was opposed to the rituals of Oku Riro, preferring to leave everything to God. Somehow, before the seventh day of the burial, the deceased avenged his own death by pursuing the murderer in his sleep. The murderer was said to have suddenly woken up from his sleep screaming as the deceased spirit chased him. Not long after, the murderer was reported to have collapsed and died. Huh.
Whatever works.
I'm sorry?
Whatever works.
Exactly. But very interesting, right? That the and also, right, already, right, you have this sense, right, of this sort of religious syncretism, right? That there is, that the Yoruba culture and religion sort of works in a side-by-side way with Christianity, right? So maybe someone is a devout Christian, so they're not going to pursue the specific rituals of the Yoruba, right? But the Yoruba customs still seem to hold a certain amount of sway and end up explaining the otherwise unexplainable death of the guy who murdered the great uncle. Are there specific circumstances under which we should fear death, according to Yoruba? Yes, especially when deaths are unusually frequent or inexplicable. The Yoruba are accustomed to finding causes of death and ensuring their non-recurrence. For example, they fear death of children known as abiku, who are associated with spirit children. These are children who are reincarnated to be reborn and die, no matter what. These children are stuck in a perpetual cycle that prevents them from growing into adulthood. Death of spirit children defies the Yoruba mind so much that abiku are said to confound the most knowledgeable medicine men and women. They also fear death that occurs in mysterious circumstances, such as when a couple dies the day after their wedding. A very experienced swimmer drowns and dies. A ruler dies shortly after ascending the throne. A perfectly healthy individual dies suddenly without any apparent signs of sickness, or all of one's children or siblings die on the same day, even though they are all located in different places. All these examples make one reflect on the significance of Yoruba personal names like Ikudefu. Death has become a wind. Ikusunwan, death is not nice. And Ikujayasimi, oh death, let the community have breathing space. And Ikudabo, oh death, please stop. Which now makes me wonder, like, to what degree, how many of these names are there? And with what frequency are people given names that begin with the word Iku, right?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to that question, but it does, yeah. So is there a relationship between this is the question you were asking before, Naomi, right? Is there a relationship between how we live our lives here on Earth and what happens after we die? In traditional Yoruba cosmology, there seems to be no explicit reference to final judgment as in Islam and Christianity. Humans are enjoined to do well in life so that when death eventually comes, one can be remembered for one's good deeds. One's character may be measured in terms of virtue and vice, or in deeds that are worthy of reward. For the Yoruba, this is the core essence of religion, right? So it's basically your reputation and your good name, it sounds like, right? That your character is what really matters. And that the reward, living that way is its own reward. For example, a prosperous and successful individual can be said to be reaping the good deeds of her deceased parents during their lifetime. Likewise, an individual who suffers may be said to be reaping the bad deeds of his or her deceased parents. So it is assumed that the descendants of a wicked individual may live to reap the punishment meant for his or her parents. Yoruba shares this idea with Christianity, as in the account of a worthy man of note in the Old Testament book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 44. It might be an Old Testament book, but it's not in the Jewish Bible. I always thought Ecclesiasticus was apocryphal, not in the
Well,
Old
I didn't
Testament.
know that. I've always liked Ecclesiastes.
I'm
But
sorry?
what it says is the sins of the fathers shall be visited on the sons.
It does say that. It says that
Yeah.
in Jeremiah, right? It says that in
Yeah,
in Exodus,
yeah.
Until the third generation.
and sometimes the fourth, Sandy.
Well, Momser goes down to the 10th, but all right. But let me go back one paragraph. Are these spirit children kind of like Dybbuk's?
Yeah, that's a great question. Each one of these paragraphs raises for me more questions than it answers.
Yeah,
Because I'm fascinated by this idea also. So the spirit children confound the most knowledgeable medicine men and women, right? So what is done, right? And do they come always into the same family, or do they bounce from family to family? Is that the explanation for a child who dies young, right? Is that it's a spirit child who kind of can't get off first base, so to speak? I don't know.
yeah. Because obviously you would be curious to know more about what the medicine men and women can prevent.
Right. Right. And what do they attempt to do, right? To overcome this.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see here. How do the Yoruba let go and grieve those who have died? The Yoruba spend an awful lot of time and energy on burying their dead. It is assumed that a proper burial is required, not only to ensure the deceased's peaceful transition to the world of the ancestors, but to ensure that those of the living are not affected by death's visit. Burial ceremonies and rituals may take up to an entire week and involve the deceased extended and immediate family, their lineage and clan, residents of their town, and ultimately the whole community. So that's really interesting, right? Because we were talking about, when you're not celebrating or participating in the rituals having to do with death for a young person, right? So this would explain that generally everybody participates in these rituals. In certain places, it is also assumed that the dead must be encouraged to depart quickly and visit the open market, Oja, where they may make appearances as spirits. Among the Owo Yoruba people, it is believed that the dead, through a journey back home, must first return to the sacred city of Yoruba creation, Ile Ife, and the ancestral realm.
Yeah, we have the 300 decibel file.
Oh. Boy, I tell you.
Please remain in your apartment with the door closed until the fire department gives specific instructions to you.
Okay. All right. In the Owo Yoruba tradition, where age sorry, folks. Where age groups are well established, burial rituals and ceremonies are taken seriously. The members of these age groups are responsible for digging the graves of their peers or their peers' parents who have passed on to ensure that they are properly buried. Hence, the Yoruba would say, "Eni gabele lo sinku, ene sinkun ariru lopa." Literally, it is the grave diggers who are the real mourners. Relations who shed tears are merely making loud noises. Wow, and that's the end. All right, so how does this relate to your own understanding of what does this add for us in terms of
Well, the noise suddenly stopped, so I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
And we'll hear the engine shortly. But the members of those age groups which must be digging. Oh Christ.
I thought it was interesting. I haven't heard much about parallel realms before, described that way with the afterlife.
Yeah, this idea of two sides of a gourd, I think I find to be very, very interesting. And also
Yeah.
this notion that that there's clearly concern, right? And I think again in our traditions we have similar concerns, right? To make sure that someone is buried properly, right? We want to make sure that it's done correctly, and that the correctness of the of the burial has to do not only with the deceased, right? Whether we have a sense that they're going back to some other world or not, but it also obviously has to do with.
Oh, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
It's Elaine.
Oh, Elaine, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Good. What's happening?
Not too much. I want to listen to this. This sounds good.
Good. Good. Well, yeah. So we're gonna do this for about another 5 minutes or so, and then we will be transitioning to doing sing along. So.
Okay.
Great. Right. So. So let's go put you here. So yeah. So other thoughts about. Oopsie. Other thoughts about the Yoruba here, and yeah, go ahead, Florence. You're muted though, Florence. So while we're waiting for Florence, any thoughts, Sandy?
Well, I was thinking about in New Jersey in the 60s, the Kohanim don't go into the service. There's a house for them to sit outside, and that's the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting, right? That there are certain there in many cultures, right? There are certain taboos against interacting with the dead for certain members of the community, right? And that which might suggest a certain power that the dead have, or a certain danger that they represent to the larger community if certain people, like in this case, right, with the Yoruba, right, if the king interacts with people who have died not in the natural course of things, right? That somehow will be, not only personally dangerous for the king, but presumably would be dangerous for the entire community, right? And so we need to.
It makes you want to learn more about this because it really is one of the articles that raises more questions than it provides answers.
It certainly does. It certainly does. It feels like almost a study guide for questions of the research. Rather.
On the other hand, probably if you're a Yoruba, it makes perfect sense.
Of course.
Attention, your attention, please. The building emergency condition has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. The building emergency has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. Attention, your attention, please. The building emergency condition has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. The building emergency has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. Attention, your attention,
How many
please.
times do they need to
The
tell us
building
this?
emergency condition has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities. The building emergency has been cleared. You may return to your normal activities.
Where's that?
That's the fire alarm system, Elaine, that is at 100 Center Street, but they clearly need to repeat everything 6 times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, some of us attempted to complain about the noise level many months ago now. And basically we're told to not jeopardize the good relationship that 100 Center Street had with the Brookline Fire Department. It was a very interesting put down from both the administration and the fire department.
yeah.
They ignored us for 3 weeks. And when they finally responded, there was a 24-hour turnaround between the time they investigated the noise level and the time we got the letter back from the fire department. It was very interesting.
Yes, I can imagine.
But anyway, I didn't even hear the engine coming, so this was probably a system malfunction.
Probably a system malfunction, exactly.
Glad you weren't in your office. Or
No,
what.
I'm over at 112 Center, so
Okay.
I was insulated from it. So this article really does raise a lot of questions, and yes, it also seems to be the person being interviewed seems to be speaking in such a way that yes, probably someone who is Yoruba would understand it exactly. People like us who are new to this are, at least I have to confess that I'm a little bit at a loss in terms of many of these questions.
But okay, if somebody were going to sit down and try to explain Judaism to a Yoruba, you might wind up with the same kind of issue.
Exactly. So obviously it's a very complicated system, right? As most religions are. And also I think it's not just that, it's also probably that it's probably also like Judaism and Christianity, it probably has many variations within it, right? And without some sort of concept of the geographical and ideological spread, it's a little bit hard to follow these try to make generalizations. But anyway, all right, so good. So next week, next Monday is International Women's Day. So I'm going to try to find something that would be appropriate to learn for that day. So I hope you'll join us next Monday. I will announce probably on Wednesday what the reading will be. And as usual, we'll try to make it available on the internet and look forward to catching up with everybody soon. Thanks again, Cara, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's so great that you were. And we're going to switch gears and and Marina is here. So we're gonna switch gears and play some music. So feel free
Bye-bye.
to stick around and join us.
Goodbye and thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Hello, Marina. How are you? Good. All right. So we're just good. Hello, Sylvia. Nice to see you. All right. And someone just joined us at 5782. Who's that?
Bertha.
Say it again.
Bertha Sivak.
Oh, Bertha. Nice to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Great. Well, we're just switching, Bertha, to move from our conversation to our singing. So just give me a second to pull out my guitar and I'm going to put my mask back on because Marina's going to be here with me to sing, and we will get started.
Marina.
All right.
Hello, Marina.
Well, say again?
I said hello, Marina.
Oh, hello. Yeah, hey, Marina. Elaine is saying hi.
Oh, hi, Elaine.
Hi. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good.
We miss you over here.
I know. I miss you too.
All right, so we're just give me 1 second here, guys, to get myself together, and we will be sharing the screen with the. Okay.
I wonder how some you and I don't have to wear masks.
I wonder that myself. We will definitely sing better when we're not wearing masks. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with Am Yisrael Chai, one of our favorite little jumpy songs. All right. So hello, everybody. We're gonna. This is already on YouTube, so we'll just continue on YouTube and. All right, we'll start with Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu Chai. Am Yisrael 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 Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Rabinu Chai. Oh, Rabinu, Rabinu, Very nice, everybody. Okay, let's see what's going on over here. Just see. Oh, so all we can see is me. That's no good. We don't want that. We want to be able to see Marina also. Okay. There we go. There we go. Better. Oh, better. Much better. All right. Let's see what's next. Oh, good. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't 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 gonna study war no more. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my heavy load down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't 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 gonna study war no more. I'm gonna shake hands around the world, down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna shake hands around the world, down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. I ain't 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 gonna study war no more. All right, very nice. Nice work, everybody. Здравствуйте, Nikolai.
Здравствуйте.
Okay. Oh, let's see what we've got here. Let's see. Let's start here. There we go. But this one I need the chords. I don't quite remember them all. All right, мы будем петь по-русски. So right now we're going to sing a Russian song. It's called Moscow Nights, and I'll translate the first verse for you, Bertha and Elaine, since you can't see them in front of you. Excuse me. Stillness in the grove, not a rustling sound. Softly shines the moon, clear and bright. Dear, if you could know how I treasure so this most beautiful Moscow night. So it's basically a love song, and I think the speaker is supposed to be a man talking to his girlfriend, but you know, who knows?
You don't know.
Не слышны в саду даже шорохи. Все здесь замерло до утра. Нет
Podmoskovnia večera. И знали бы, как мне дороги подмосковные вечера. Речка движется и не движется, вся из неба зелено. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера.
Where do you go?
Basically, yeah, just
Up?
well, just the very that one right there. Perfect. Что ж ты, милая, смотришь искоса, низко голову наклоня, трудно высказать или высказать все, что на сердце у меня. Трудно высказать и не высказать все, что на сердце у меня. На рассвет уже все заметнее. Так, пожалуйста, туда не забудьте эти летние подмосковные вечера. Не забудьте эти летние подмосковные вечера. All right, very nice. Oh, вот, okay. And we продолжаем. We're going to continue now with Somewhere Over the Rainbow, another big favorite of us. Где-то там над радугой мы говорим по-русски. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney top. That's where you'll find me. And somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, birds fly over the rainbow. Why then, oh why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why Let's see, so how about hallelujah? You think good up for that?
Yep.
Okay, oopsie, I'm not sure what's going on here. It's not working. There we go. Okay. All right, so your job, if you don't mind, is to push it twice the first after this one.
Twice the right arrow?
Yeah, and then when we get to the end, to push it 3 times back arrow.
Oh, my goodness.
It's complicated.
Twice first and.
Twice first and then 3 times.
Okay.
But keep on going forward until you go back those 3 times. I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord. But you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall, and the major lift. The baffled king composing, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Спасибо, Бог, за лунный свет, за дивный мир других планет, за каждый миг, который проживу я. За радость, грусть, за свет и тень, за самый лучший в жизни день, за каждый новый вздох мой, аллилуйя. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
I think I overdid.
That's okay. Oops. Hallelujah. Forward. Hallelujah. 2 more. Hallelujah. 1 more. Forward. There we go. Спасибо, Бог, что ты со мной, за каждый новый день земной, за все, что в этом мире так люблю я. За шум листвы, за дождь и снег минут, неумолимый бег, за свет в моем окошке, аллилуйя. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Прости, что эти люди зли, что в мире сумрака и мгли живут всем вопреки собой, даю я. Позабыть, простить, любить и жить добром, и просто быть во благо этой жизни, аллилуйя, аллилуйя, аллилуйя. Hallelujah, hallelujah. I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I've told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya. Even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord a song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Ooh, hallelujah. 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 All right. Lishna. Oh, we lost somebody. I don't know whom we lost. Nikolai исчез. Okay. Ничего страшного. Okay. Although he would love this one more than anyone else. All right, so this one is also in Russian, everybody. It's called Katyusha. It's one of our favorites. Apple and pear trees were blooming. Mists floated over the water, over the river. Katyusha came out onto the shore and onto the steep, high bank. And the point of this song is that she's missing her boyfriend who has gone away to defend the realm. And she's singing a song. And the narrator says that the song sort of addresses the song and says, "You song, go over the miles and say hello to the warrior from Katyusha." And once that message has been delivered, Katyusha goes back home off the riverbank. So, all right. Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила на берег Катюша, на высокий берег, на крутой. Выходила, песню заплатила, простегнула сизого орла. Про того, которого любила, про того, чьи письма берегла. Про того, которого любила, про того, чьи письма берегла. Ой, эти песни любвичья, ты лети за ясным солнцем свет. И бойцу на дальнем пограничье от Катюши передай привет. И бойцу на дальнем пограничье от Катюши передай привет. Пусть он помнит девушку простую, пусть услышит, как она поет. Пусть он землю бережет родную, а любовь Катюша сбережет. Пусть он землю бережет родную, а любовь Катюша сбережет. Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманы над рекой. Уходила с берега Катюша, уносила песню за собой. Уходила с берега Катюша, уносила песню за собой. All right, that's always a fun one. Okay, so let's do our final song will be I Want to Hold Your Hand. Let's see if we can find it in our list of songs here. Nope, not that way. There we go. Okay. All right, so it's always good to sing a little bit of Beatles. Oh yeah, I tell you something, I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand. Oh please, say to me, you let me be your man. And please, say to me, you let me hold your hand. Now let me hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand. touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Yeah, yeah, you got that something. I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. I wanna hold your hand. And when I touch you, I feel happy inside. It's such a feeling that my love I can't hide, I can't hide, I can't hide. Yeah, yeah, you got that something. I think you'll understand when I feel that something. I wanna hold your hand. 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 All right. Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Bertha. Thanks.
Oh, it's wonderful. I enjoyed it.
That was very nice.
Wonderful to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
We'll see you sometime
We have to
soon.
do it again.
We'll do it again next week.
Wonderful.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I know.
I don't know. Oh, Nikolai was here. Phenomenal.
He resurfaced.
He resurfaced, exactly. There's my, there it is.